From Washington, D.C., this is Middle East Focus.
Welcome to Middle East Focus. My name is Lyne Sneige, and I'm the director of the Arts and Culture Center at the Middle East Institute. This is an exciting time for us as we inaugurate the MEI Art Gallery, the first gallery in DC, embedded in a think tank and dedicated to contemporary art, video, and photography from the Middle East. Our inaugural show, entitled Arabicity, Ourouba, opens to the public on September 14 as part of the DC-wide festival Art All Night and runs until November 22nd. The show features the work of 17 Arab artists, reflecting on 2 decades of socio-political change in the Middle East, and is curated by London-based Rose Issa, who championed Middle East art for more than 30 years. The show is accompanied by a rich program of art talks, panels, and film screenings throughout the months of September, October, and November. With me in the studio today is Rose Issa, the curator of Arabicity, who has joined us in DC from London. Welcome, Rose.
Thank you, Lyne. Thank you.
Rose, tell us about Arabicity. What does the word mean? And this word has given birth to many iterations and many exhibitions. Tell us what it's about.
If you open a dictionary, the word doesn't exist. But I wanted to find the equivalent, the translation for the word from Arabic, Ourouba, which comes from the root of Arab. What are the concerns of the Arab? What is the Arabism? What are all the declination that come from the word Arab? And what are, in my case, because I'm more interested in visual arts and films, it is what are the concerns, really, whether it's aesthetical, conceptual, and sociopolitical, of visual artists from the Arab world. So it has to reflect that. This is what I'm trying to reflect in a few works.
The exhibition includes the work of 17 artists, at least the one that we are showing in DC. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit, how do you choose the artists to include? And maybe you can highlight a few pieces for us from the show.
Sure. You know, the concept of Arabicity, I have done several exhibitions based on that concept. The first one was 10 years ago at the European Parliament. It was called Reorientations. Then we did a catalog and it was over. Anyhow, I did several versions of it at the Liverpool Blue Coat Gallery in Liverpool, then at the Beirut Exhibition Center, then at the Beirut Art Fair and in London. And this is the last, in fact, a sort of combining some of the artists, because in a publication I wanted to conclude that thing. 17 artists, how do you choose? Frankly, it's many things that decide: the size of the exhibition area, the venue, the size of the venue, the budget, the timing, whether the artists have works available, and so on. Anyhow, I wanted it to reflect where the concerns that have been on our shoulders and our head for years, which is the Palestinian issue, the recent wars in the Gulf, with the uprisings in the last decade, and so on. And how do the creative minds of the Arab world reflect those concerns, whether aesthetically or sociopolitically? Yes, there are some works. The artist Mahmoud Awedi is here in Washington, D.C. He's from Iraq and he has done magnificent works. We just chose one work because the space is limited. We brought only one work from each artist, unfortunately. But each artist deserves a solo exhibition in any public institution in the U.S., by the way. So there's Ayman Balbaki from Lebanon. There are from Palestine, Raeda Saadeh, who always is a performing artist, sort of Cindy Sherman of the Arab world, really. Then we have a wonderful video by Sharif Waqet, which is called The Chic Point, which is about, how to dress up at the checkpoints. It's a very funny video, with glamorous young men showing how to zip up and zip in their shirts so that they can cross the 1,000,001 check. I mean, taking how to bring humor and life to the difficulties and limitations and the concerns and the restriction we live on daily basis, whether it's in Palestine, in Iraq, in Lebanon, with the civil war that started in 1975, for example. That was the year Ayman Balbaki was born, or Tagrid and Saeed. Everybody, all the young generation were born during the war, the civil war of Lebanon. So many had dealt with loss, with destruction, and they had to rebuild everything. And to rebuild it creatively through the artwork is something that gave lots of energy and hope to many of us. And I wanted to share that.
Indeed, that is beautiful, and the show balances a lot of those themes that you were talking about, which are about belonging and loss and homelessness and displacement, but also with a lot of humor. So, do you always balance your shows like this when you curate them, Rose?
I don't calculate if I want to balance. These are works that attracted me. You know, when I present the works, for example, of Chantal Védician, that was corresponding to an era that was very important in Arab history, 1956. The Suez Canal, the war of how the British and the French with the Israeli wanted to stop the liberation of something. And it was about hope of the Arab world with Nasser's talk. I mean, this was the president who was 36-year-old only. And everybody, the whole world went against him. And despite that, he won. He won the independence of Suez Canal. He won the respect, and he brought dignity and respect to the Arab world. So the Arabism and the Arabicity that I'm talking about is also had several moments of time that was captured by the artists and who brought hope. This is the years where the woman voted in Egypt. There was the independence of Algeria, getting support from Nasser and Bandung and the non-aligned group. I mean, there are important periods that are reflected in those work, and I wanted to bring that joy, that color, and that concerns aesthetically to the eyes and the ears of the public.
And you mentioned also in our conversation, of course, we are very lucky to have Mahmoud Ubaidi with us here in DC, unfortunately not with us here in the studio at the moment, but his piece is on the main wall in the gallery at the MEI Art Gallery. And can you talk a little bit about this piece? It's very interesting. It has to do with his being an Iraqi and all the tragedy of the Iraqi war, but it's also very pertinent with the message it has.
Yes, the work is made with swords that are linked together, and it has Arabic script of salam, which means peace. How do you do peace with swords? Sort of almost like a war and peace. He did it also in English, by the way, with the sword. But all his work is about war. It's about how to reflect on how do we negotiate. Since Middle East Institute here is a think tank about negotiation and instruction and knowledge, and to give the knowledge to others, to all these diplomats who may not know much about the Middle East. When I see Kushner going to the Middle East, I'm very sad that somebody who has never come probably to your institute is reflecting what are the concerns of our region. But anyhow, this is about how do we conceive peace. Is it with war? Is it with negotiation? Is it with art? Is it with education? Or is it with knowledge? And I remember one of the mashrabiyas of Susan Hefuna, whose exhibition here, which was called Knowledge is Sweeter Than Honey, because everything comes through knowledge, really. And this is the way forward for the Arabs and for the West.
Arabicity, Rose, gave way to a book that is being launched as well at MEI in conjunction with the opening of the exhibition. Can you tell us a little bit about the book? And is the book, after sort of many years of reflecting and reflecting on Arabicity, is this like a closure to this project for you?
I don't know. The word maybe closure, I don't know what I will do next. But in some ways, I did that exhibition in 5 different venues, from 5 different angles, really, depending. Sometimes it was 4 artists, sometimes it was 7, sometimes it was much a bigger group of artists. In European Parliament, it was 25 artists. The book reflects 50 artists through 200 artworks. And in some ways, I wanted to let it go into other hands and other reflection and other thinking. It was needed because every time I do an exhibition, a catalog is out of print within 2 weeks. And a book is different. You publish with a book, this is with Saqi Books, and then if the 2,000 copies are finished, they can reprint it. The same thing is happening with Masalan Hassan Hajjaj, a Moroccan artist for whom I did a monograph, and we're on the 3rd and 4th print now, because he's having finally today actually opened his exhibition in Paris at the Maison Européenne de Photographie, and he has a big solo show, and they are doing a big catalog, but for the last 10 years, that was the only book available on him, and we had to reprint and reprint. So I'm glad to do this, where there are contributors like Dr. George Korm, a wonderful historian and economist from Lebanon, who was a minister at some stage, Etel Adnan, who is now in her 90s and who, despite her age and her fatigue, wrote a text, a bit pessimistic, but true to the point. Meshket Krifa, who compares 1968 uprising in Paris with what are the uprising in the Arab world, and the difference where there were ideologies in Paris while there were no ideologies, no philosophers, no thinker between those uprising. It was really coming from the population. The street spoke. And all these differences for me was very important. And the fact that all these artists at one stage or another reflected on the key moment of our history. So I wanted to do that. And then, of course, in the last 30 years, I did many other exhibitions, one on the morphology of the letter. And it ended up in a book called Signs of Our Times, with how 3 generations of people who are not calligraphers use the word Arabic script or Persian script in order to express themselves aesthetically. But also monographs on artists, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, we have a fantastic creativity in the Arab world. Maybe because I always quote Rumi, who says, whatever comes from a need, a sore distress, a hurting want. And there is so much trouble in our region that they have something to say. I used to think maybe the West is a little bit Shavan is satisfied, they eat well and they don't have much maybe to say, so they can decorate now. But as Mahmoud Abedi, who came yesterday, was telling me, no, he said there is enough material in the street with the homelessness for people who are interested in sociopolitical concern to reflect on that. In London, where I live, it's only Banksy who does that. Very few people do sociopolitical work that speaks to the street. He's not on the market. He does graffitis on the street.
Absolutely.
And this I admire.
Yes, and that's a very good segue for the next question I have for you. How important was it for you to show Arabicity in Washington, D.C.? It was important for us as the Middle East Institute to open with this show because it embeds so well our other work. We have always highlighted artists from the region who are very sociopolitically engaged because we are a think tank and those are the current issues we deal with every day. And we brought in the arts as another avenue to explore those issues. But how important was it for you, who have championed Middle Eastern art for so many years, to show in a place like Washington, D.C.?
As you know, there are not many venues or institutions who had focused on the Arab world or Arab artists. Now there is, luckily, there is more focus, maybe because of Trump's policy in the Middle East, maybe because all the mistakes the American politician did for years and years, to go against Mossadegh in 1952, who was the most democratic moment in Iran, to go against the Vietnam War. There were mistakes done politically because of the ignorance of many politicians and because there was not a territory to prepare them to think about it. I was very delighted when Middle East Institute, through you actually, Lyne, because you did a lot of work also in Lebanon, when you invited me, I said, yes, we want an Arab presence. Even though everybody is so reluctant. The Secular Gallery was telling me, many Middle Eastern artists don't want to come to America. I myself was very hesitant to come because I'm born in Iran, I go to Iran, and I was not sure to get a visa. Despite that, I came because I think we have to make a point. We have to make a presence here. And we have to open up to those who are ready to read and see and hear about what are the real concerns of the Arab world. Who are we? What do we have to say? And are there listeners? I hope there will be listeners, and I hope there will be seers. I hope there will be people who want to take the conversation and dialogue further. And just a drop in the sea, but we have to do it.
Absolutely. There's much to do, as you say. But I don't think there is a time more than now where this kind of work is needed. We have to continue, and we would love to host your voices again and similar voices from the region and voices in the U.S. that are working in the same manner as well. A closing question for you, Rose. We know that a lot of those Arab artists are increasingly getting international exposure and have all those opportunities. For example, Mahmoud Obeidi, who's here with us in DC, has a piece and a show at MoMA PS1 opening in October. And there are many, many other examples. How do you think those artists in the region are balancing this international sort of fame and increase in exposure? At the same time, so many challenges for there in the region to do their work, to do cultural production.
I think curators can no longer. There was a time where even in London, where I live, the Tate was Tate Britain. They were only interested in British art. You cannot anymore in any part of the world, in America, in Africa, be saying, I'm only interested in American art. You have to go global. You have to be interested in Chinese, African, Arab, South African, Australian, and so forth, so on. Unless you go global, you become ignorant and you become small. I was very pleased, for example, yesterday I went to the Phillips Collection to see a wonderful exhibition about migration and see many Arab artists and Iranian artists and Kurdish, Turkish artists participating in that show. Almost 50% of the artists were from there, whether it's Ghadir Atiyah, Adel Abdel Samad. Even the theme of Francis Alice was about migration. And this is an artist who was European, but worked on a theme that concerns the whole Mediterranean. You know what the invasion of Libya has created is only nasty immigration of so many people who used to work in North Africa and who have no longer opportunities to work. So they are coming to Europe and they are drowning in the Mediterranean Sea. Rachid Qureshi, the Algerian artist in Jerba, in the island of Jerba in Tunis, has now made a whole cemetery where there are already 200 dead Africans. And he made it into almost a museum for African dead people who did this migration. So there are fantastic events happening left and right. And nobody is going to be not concerned with this, because if your arm hurts, the rest of the body hurts, even if it's only your finger. You feel it. And if something is happening that is hurting Africans migrating, Syrians migrating, Iraqis not losing their museums, their infrastructure, Lebanese, Palestinians, and so on, there is no way we can be anymore, with all the networks that exist, blind to the suffering of others or to the beauty of others. And in art, we can combine both. We can combine loss and gain. We can combine aesthetics with grief or... artists are wonderful speakers and ambassadors of the pulse of the country.
Absolutely. They are important, as you say, ambassadors. They are important change agents, and we want to continue highlighting their work, their stories, and their voices. Thank you so much, Rose Issa, for being with us in DC here. We are so honored and privileged to open with your show, Arabicity, Ourouba.
Thank you.
Please, listeners, come and attend the many programs around Arabicity. Sign up on our website, www.mei.edu, and go to Arts and Culture Center to receive information on our programs.
This has been a presentation of the Middle East Institute. To support MEI's programs and podcasts, please donate at www.mei.edu. Thank you for your support.